the floor to Joel. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to colleagues who have taken the time to attend this webinar on plastic waste amendments for enforcement. My name is Joel Batchasing. I am the BCRC Caribbean's Acting Director as well as the Vice Chair of Enforce, and Enforce has opted to chair this meeting today, as well as the meeting on the 30th. And Katie Ollie, the Chair of Enforce, will chair that meeting primarily because of time difference. I think it's 5 a.m. my time on Wednesday. So good morning again. Just before we get started, I just have to clear some administrative issues. So Dan has taken the time to housekeeping. So I ask that you keep your mics muted, and we also have to inform participants that we are recording the meeting. And is there any objection to that recording? The recording, of course, will be provided to you, and all presentations will be provided to you subsequent to the meeting. Is there anyone objecting? I'm not sure if I'm seeing a raised hand from T. Armstrong. Nope, it's just dropped.
Before, yeah.
Okay, great. So we have no objections to the recording. So again, colleagues, so it's a pleasure to be here this morning. As you know, at the 14th meeting of COP at the Conference of Parties in 2019, the Basel Convention decided that at BC 1412, we adopted the amendments to the Annexes II, VIII and IX to enhance the control of transboundary movements of plastic waste and to clarify the scope of the convention as it applies to such waste. In the lead up to these webinars, we've had several, and several of them were organized through the Secretariat, and some of you actually have seen the names, have attended, because I myself have attended. So there were 3 webinars, essentially started in August. First set was on legal frameworks, technical aspects, and of course we're here today and on Wednesday to the enforcement side of things. So as you may or may not know, but just for clarity, the Enforce, or the Environmental Network for Optimizing Regulatory Compliance and Illegal Traffic, is through a relevant network of experts to promote parties' compliance with the provisions of the Basel Convention, and of course, pertaining to the illegal traffic of hazardous waste and other waste. So we felt it was a good place for us to decide that we wanted to host this meeting for you. So today's agenda, we have 5 presentations. We have one from the Secretariat, which is really a synopsis, and then we go to the 4 presentations, and they really represent and different experiences. So essentially, we have one from England, we have one from Ghana, we have one from WCO, and one from Interpol. So I'll now pause here and yield to Tatiana Terakova from the BRS Secretariat to do the introduction presentation. So Tatiana, over to you.
And hello, all the participants. So I represent the Secretariat of the BRS Conventions. I am a Program Management Officer in the Secretariat. I deal with a number of issues, including the illegal traffic, and I also facilitate Enforce from the Secretariat. So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction. Just to set the scene. As Jules already mentioned, the amendments on the plastic waste were adopted at the last Conference of the Parties in 2019, and parties specifically agreed that they will become effective only on the 1st of January 2021 in order to give time for the preparation of the implementation of those amendments. Therefore, in this context, the Secretariat decided to organize a series of webinars, and here you can see there are some specific aspects which already discussed earlier, well, end of August and in September, and this one on enforcement issues is the last in the series of these webinars. And just to say that the recordings of these other webinars which already took place are available on the BRS website. So, well, I will now stop my video in order to keep the internet fluid. All right, so just very quickly about the amendments. So, so what exactly these amendments are about? Well, as you know, currently the plastic waste which are subject to the control of the Basel Convention are so-called hazardous waste. And this here we use the classical, let's say, definition, what is a hazardous waste under the Basel Convention. And also currently plastic waste can be classified under the other waste, which is Annex II, which includes waste collected from households or residues from the incineration of the household waste. So what is changing from 1st of January? What is changing is that first of all, the scope of the hazardous of the plastic waste, which are the hazardous, is clarified. So this is Annex 8, and we have a new entry, A3210, which now reads that plastic waste, including mixture of such waste, which are contained or contaminated with Annex I constituents to the extent that exhibit Annex III characteristics. These are the this type of waste which are subject to the PEAK procedure, and so these are the waste under the Annex 8. And the example of hazardous constituents which can be found in plastic waste are those which are, for example, additives which are used in various applications, for example, as a heat or light stabilizer, or halogenated organic compounds used as a flame retardant. So this is Annex 8, which is amendment further clarify what is hazardous waste. Another change is related to the Annex II. It's a plastic waste which requires special consideration, and for that, parties decided to add a new entry, Y48, which covers plastic waste, including mixtures of such waste, except for those which fall under the entry A3210 or B3011. An example of such plastic waste is, for example, polyvinyl chloride. And finally, so those two categories are subject to the PEAK procedure. So which plastic waste which will not be subject to the PEAK procedure? Well, it's this non-hazardous plastic waste, and the amendments clarified and gave details what kind of waste we mean, as we understand, as a non-hazardous waste. So here we have a number of certain single polymers, for example, non-halogenated polymers, QResons, or single fluorinated polymers, or it can be mixtures of specific polymers. And in fact, the amendment specifically mentions which mixtures. So it can be mixtures of PE, PP, and or PTE, PETs, excuse me. And on the condition that they are destined for separate recycling of each material, and they have to be recycled in environmentally sound manner, and they are almost free from contamination and other types of waste. So these are the let's say the new what will change starting next year when it comes to the trade of plastic waste. You have some more information about plastic waste amendment on the Basel website under the frequently asked questions. So, well, here today we'll be talking about enforcement, and Basel Convention has a very specific concept of illegal traffic, which is basically links to the transboundary movement, which do not follow appropriate procedures as specified under the Basel Convention. But what is really important, and I think it's really very special if you look at the international environmental law, that illegal traffic is to be considered criminal under the national legislation. And here the convention lists specific situations when the transboundary movement becomes an illegal traffic. And here you can see that it's mostly procedural issues. For example, it's transboundary movement without notification, consent, with false documents, or it can be deliberate disposal. And each party, in fact, is required to introduce appropriate measures on the national level to prevent and punish the illegal traffic. And here, just to remind you that the convention also talks about the consequences, meaning that what happens when a particular movement is considered illegal traffic. And here you have three cases. So the first case is that if it's responsibility of exporter or generator, then it's exporter or generator are to need to take back this shipment, or if it's not practical, find another way to dispose this waste in an environmentally sound manner. And this has to happen within the 30 days from the time when state of export was informed about illegal traffic, or depending if when the two or more states agree on a different timeline. Then the second case, if it's a result of conduct of importer or disposer, also you have 30 days. Again, it can be disposed of in the country of import, or yes, in the country of import. And finally, if it's impossible to assign responsibility, then the states concerned have to agree where this illegal shipment will be disposed of. And we have further information about illegal traffic in the recently adopted guidance document. It's available in 6 UN languages. Well, there are a number of various procedures which can follow the case of illegal traffic, and I think we'll hear some good examples, interesting examples in the follow-up presentations. And as we, discussing here, what is really critical is that cooperation between parties. So it's international cooperation. When it comes to the finding solution to the case of illegal traffic, but also within the country on the national level, the cooperation between various actors, of course, the competent authorities, but also the enforcement entities, customs, police, port authorities, prosecutors, is really crucial. And that's why we're very pleased to have relevant organization, including WCO, Interpol, talking to us today. So without further ado, I would like to stop here and back to you, Jewel.
Sure. Thanks very much, Tatiana, for that introduction to set the context and remind persons of the plastic waste amendments and the deadline. And yes, we definitely are going to share experiences. Part of the role of NFORCE is, of course, to share those experiences and ensure cooperation and collaboration amongst parties. And the first presentation is actually an interesting one, which is actually talking about a case study which looks at the current challenges and success of repatriation of plastic waste. And our presentation is going to be done by Mr. Russell Howard. He is commonly known as Russ, and he is the holder of an undergraduate degree in environmental science from Bath Spa University and a master's degree in waste and resource management from Cranfield University. I like the fact that you're from Bath because it's one of my famous authors. Jane Austen is from Bath, for those of you who share that similar affinity. He worked in the private sector for 1 year as a landfill environmental monitoring technician before joining the Environment Agency of England as an environment officer in 2011. His role involved regulating numerous waste facilities as well as investigating and taking enforcement action against illegal operators. Since 2018, he has worked in the Environment Agency's Enforcement and Waste Crime Strategy and Policy Department, focusing on the illegal export of waste, and was responsible for implementing the agency's waste repatriation process guidance, which they've now been using for nearly 2 years. And he has also worked closely with operational colleagues in overseeing the ongoing repatriation cases. The name of his presentation is Current Challenges and Success for the Enforcement of the Basel Convention in relation to repatriation of plastic waste. Mr. Howard, you have the floor.
Experience of the repatriation of waste, which obviously includes plastic, over the last couple of years. Can I move to the next slide, please? Oh, I can do that myself here, can I? There we go. So in the Environment Agency, we regulate waste exports and monitor the export of waste from England and attempt to disrupt illegal shipments and create a level playing field for the industry, ensuring the right waste goes to the right place. We have 2 national teams in the Environment Agency, one of regulatory officers undertaking compliance inspections, and another of dedicated port officers, technical specialists, and intelligence staff who visit the highest risk load sites that we have in our country. So, regulating waste exports and our interventions. So, we are exclusively intelligence-led when it comes to regulation of waste exports. We intervene at our ports and upstream at our load sites to prevent waste being exported illegally. We receive information from both internal and external sources to help build our intelligence and develop our risk profiles on which operators and materials to target. We perceive the export of green list waste to pose the highest risk in terms of legal export from our country, and we focus our resource on this for that reason. As I've said, we do not randomly inspect containers at ports or any vehicles that move waste from our nation. We are exclusively intelligence-based. This gives us a higher success rate, whilst not unnecessarily impacting on legitimate shipments from leaving our shores. Because of this intelligence-led approach, in 2018-19 we inspected 926 containers at our English ports, of which the team responsible for that returned 236 of those containers to their load sites, which essentially prevented the illegal export of 5,349 tonnes of waste from England. Furthermore, because of our upstream interventions, we also prevented an additional 7,341 tonnes of waste leaving the load sites, essentially preventing them getting to the port in the first place. So obviously we're targeting upstream rather than having to wait until the illegal shipment gets to the port. Over the last 4 years, on average, approximately 26% of the containers that our port officers have stopped at the ports, they've returned to their load sites. Okay, so what is happening? Why is this waste being illegally exported? Well, unsurprisingly, there are numerous reasons that we've noticed why shipments are being stopped or returned. The recovery facilities in the overseas countries don't even exist. More of an emerging threat we're noticing is that waste is being exported as non-waste, obviously completely circumventing the waste rules completely, which is difficult at times to find where it's going, what it is, etc., etc. Definitely the impact of the China waste ban has exposed problems with the quality of some of the green list waste being exported from England. Obviously something we're working hard to fix where required. Some of the circumstances where green list waste is contaminated with hazardous materials, so we could be talking nappies, items that still have foodstuffs in them that should never have been put into the green list waste stream. Items that were incorrectly shipped as green list and should have had prior informed consent prior to being shipped out of the country. Hazardous waste being exported to non-OECD countries, that is an issue as well that we've experienced. and waste being exported to prohibited destination countries. We've subsequently picked up more repatriations of green list waste, which has informed our risk profile, and we're spotting more unsuitable green list waste, such as paper and plastic, leaving our shores than any other waste at our ports. So naturally, we focus our regulatory and enforcement effort on trying to stop those types of materials leaving our shores. So now I'm going to go through our repatriation experience. If I go to the next slide. So the EEA, the Environment Agency as competent authority for England, has the statutory obligation to arrange and finance a return of legally exported waste to England when those responsible cannot be found or be relied upon to return it. And we do take our responsibility under that obligation very seriously. As Joe mentioned, for the last 2 years, we've been using a new repatriation framework, and up to 6 different departments within the Environment Agency nationally collaborate to ensure that waste is returned voluntarily by the exporter or the shipper. Some departments are tasked with the logistics, whilst others are tasked with the investigative and enforcement aspects of the associated offending. Our approach enables us to work collaboratively across the country. We centralise our decisions across our entire country, ensuring we are focusing our investigative effort on the right targets, such as the most serious or repeat offenders. We've dealt with well over 100 repatriation requests or voluntary returns in the last 2 years. We've only been required to arrange and pay for the repatriation of those from Poland in 2019. And some of the photographs on the slide demonstrate some of the waste that we had to repatriate in that year. So the successes and the future. So we feel as an organisation we're much more coordinated in our approach to repatriation waste. We fulfil our legal obligations by managing repatriation as well. We use the information provided by overseas competent authorities to take action against illegal operators. And we use and we identify the highest risks. We are focusing our efforts to tackle the issues directly. And a recent example of that came from our colleagues in Romania, who were dealing with illegal export of waste from England, which had textiles and we amongst the shipment. So we use that information we gained from the Romanian authorities to liaise with our industry colleagues in the United Kingdom to see what we could do to help them to improve waste streams, and obviously advise their members in the industry about their own obligations with regards to waste exports and duty of care. The Basel amendments should help form a clearer picture of where waste plastic is being exported from our country, and that's something that we're going to keep a keen eye on. We should be able to better target our regulatory effort on those who are clearly flouting the rules, where most operators hopefully should move into the prior informed consent bracket from now on. Obviously, conversely, the amendment should lead to less illegal exports of plastic, and therefore hopefully lead to less repatriations required from us. So there are still some challenges. I think we'd all agree that. The first one is that we recognise that the Basel amendments won't entirely stop criminals exploiting the exports sector to make money, and colleagues further in this presentation will allude to some of that. We appreciate there will be varying interpretations of the Basel amendments across the globe. We acknowledge that industry and other nations may adopt a differing technical interpretation of the amendments. Like most enforcement authorities, more resource would enable us to make a greater impact on preventing illegal exports. We need to better understand where, how and why waste from England is being illegally exported to overseas nations, and we're keen to use your expertise and knowledge of the industry to help us meet that aspiration. As highlighted by the recently published Interpol report, which a colleague will be talking about later on, there is an increase in organised crime groups exploiting the plastic waste market for unlawful financial gain. We need to work together to monitor the sources, methods, routes used to facilitate this criminal trade, and do our utmost obviously to stop it in its tracks. So, what can we all do? Well, first and foremost, one of our main aims is to work more collaboratively, and Joel emphasised that point earlier on. We want to work as much as possible with our international partners to prevent and disrupt the genuinely illegal trade in all waste from England, not necessarily just plastic, but obviously for the purposes of this presentation and our own thoughts, it is one of the waste streams that we are paying particular attention to. We need you and competent authorities across the globe to share their concerns with us to enable us to focus on the emerging risks, as I mentioned about we in textiles earlier on. We need everybody to share intelligence with us so we can form a complete picture of the issues we face. We do our best to gather as much intelligence as we can ourselves, but everybody feeding into that process is absolutely vital in order for us to tackle the correct issues at the right time. When it comes to repatriation of waste, competent authorities notifying us of suspected illegal shipments of waste immediately would really, really help us in our fight against those who have illegally exported it in the first place. As time goes on, it becomes difficult for us to trace those that were, and therefore trying to get the voluntary return of the waste, and obviously taking necessary enforcement action against those that were responsible. Following on from that, when we do get that repatriation request, competent authorities providing us with as much detail as possible, as early on in the repatriation request as possible, just allows us to build that picture very quickly, and it allows the officers and staff that I've mentioned before in the presentation to go out and gather as much information and take action as soon as possible. We can all work together to make it more difficult for criminals to operate by us cutting off the source and our partners stopping illicit destination sites from operating in the first place. That is everything from me today. I just wanted to thank the Basel Secretariat and the Enforcement Network for giving me the opportunity to present to you today. I'm happy to take questions now or obviously later on in the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mr. Howard, for your presentation. Quite concise, a lot of information, and of course, congratulations on that enforcement effort, especially since the national sword being put in place by China. But certainly a lot of your way forward and how can we get this done really resounds with us. And how do we really get the job done? How do we make sure that everyone knows what's going on and trying to create that network so we know about illegal shipments that are happening? And of course, you raised some interesting issues about repatriation of waste that do come into these shores and what happens to it afterwards. So that's good news. And just for purposes, I didn't say it at the beginning, but we will take questions at the end because of the 4 presentations we have to get through. We want to get through those. So please keep your questions for the end, and we'll invite the presenters to come back in and answer those questions, provided we have time. So thanks again, Mr. Howard. The next presentation is being done by Dr. Sam Adukumi, and he is from Ghana. He works with the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana, which is under the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation. His background is in chemistry and toxicology, risk analysis of chemicals, with over 20 years experience in the sound management of chemicals at waste, local, regional, and global levels. And he's currently the director of the Chemicals Control and Management Center of the Environmental Protection Agency of Ghana. He's also the national focal point for all of the chemical MEAs, including the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm, Minamata, and SAICAM. And in preparing his brief, I must say that Sam was a bit humble. He did not put the fact that he was the Stockholm COP8 president, and he's no stranger to all of us. Well, I hope most of us here. But Sam, over to you to do your presentation, which focuses on illegal framework and enforcement efforts for the plastic waste amendments in Ghana. I believe that is a special focus on the NORAD-1 project. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Joel. Not to waste time, Ghana, we all know, is party to the Basel Convention, actually ratified the convention in May 2003. And as already mentioned, we are also bound to ensure that the amendments to the convention, to the Annexes II, VIII, and IX are really implemented, which take effect from 1st January 2021. So our obligation is actually to take appropriate legal, administrative, and other measures to implement and enforce the convention in accordance with Articles 4.3, 4.4, and 9.5. Already at the national level, Ghana is doing a lot to implement the convention. We have actually domesticated the Basel Convention through the Act 917 of 2016, what we call the Hazardous and Electronic Waste Control and Management Act of 2016, and its regulation, which is also called Hazardous, Electronic, and Other Waste Classification, Control, and Management Regulation 2016. So, moving on, as already mentioned, we are fortunate enough to have this BRS project, which is titled Marine Litter and Microplastics, promoting the environmental sound management of plastic waste and achieving the prevention and minimization of the generation of plastic waste. The goal is to strengthen the national capacity to control transboundary movements of plastics waste, ensure their ESM, and also prevent and minimize their generation. And this is funded by the NORAG, the Norwegian Development Corporation, a 2-year project beginning 2019 January and expected to actually end 2020. But we know the COVID issue, so extension is actually done already. And I'm sure next year, June also, we need to finish it up. So the project actually has 3 components. One is on TBM of the plastic waste, controlling them, and also ensuring the ESM, and also tackling sources of plastic waste. If I look, talking about the component 1, controlling the transboundary movement, we have done a lot of studies about the impact of the amendment of the laws that we have in place. Actually, we have had a focus group discussion with the private sector, and from what we gathered, the private sector actually doesn't seem to largely rely on the importation of the plastic waste for the recycling industry. Contrary, they actually, use domestically generated waste, more or less. And as you can see later on from a graph, even though we have a lot of waste coming into the country from 2013, but the private sector actually more or less use the internal generated waste. And that is what we are doing now. So we will later on talk about the public sector as well. But I was talking about the first component, which is about controlling the TBM, and I said that we have done a study already on the impacts of the amendment, and we had a focus group discussion, which actually was on the private sector, and the information we gathered actually points to the fact that the private sector do not rely on importation of plastic waste per se. They rely on the domestically generated waste, and as for the public sector, the waste coming in, we know that it's increasing, but more or less on what we generate from within that we use. So we are taking measures actually not even to allow large quantities of waste coming from outside, because already we have some here that we can use. And I will elaborate on the legal and institutional combinations later on. And talking about the transboundary inventory, we are using a methodology and coupled with the Ghana Customs data that we have. We try to, we have seen that the waste actually between 2013 and 2019, the inventory shows that the waste is increasing about tenfold. And the increase of the waste also comes from the EU actually, and from other countries such as our neighbors, Burkina Faso, and from other regions, which I will show in the next slide. For customs training, we have a training curriculum which is being developed, and it will be based on PowerPoint presentations, videos, guidance documents, and other relevant references, and case studies and exercises, and will tackle such issues as identifying plastic waste, inspection, dealing with potential cases of illegal traffic, and some collaboration as well. Yes, so let me come specifically on the laws that we have in place. I've mentioned the two acts, 917 and the LI 2250. So we are trying to look at definitions which are in the existing instruments. And this actually includes plastic waste in the criminal code of our 1960, sections 296 and 297. We also want to include definition of waste and plastic waste in the Local Government Act of 2016, Act 936, and also the Act 917 and LI 2250. We need to also equally consider how the amendment of the BCE will also be incorporated in it. And we also consider including the external producer responsibility, EPR, into our system, so that for single-use plastics, their packaging will all be considered in the Act 917 of 2016. If you look at, we have a national plastic management policy, which was actually approved just last year. And we want to also ensure that the definition of plastic waste is also incorporated and also include references to POPs in waste in our certain chapters of the national policy, and also include references to list PVC in some of the chapters. We are looking at the revision of the sanctions in the acts and also in some national regulations or acts, and so we can ensure proportionate, effective, and dissuasive sanctions in the criminal, and the civil and administrative, as criminal, civil and administrative penalties. There are also some secondary legislation and bylaws at the local level, and we want to develop some model bylaws by the central government, making sure that the national plastic management policy is fully operational, and also ensuring the adoption of the bylaws and other secondary legislation by local government within some time frame. We want to also allocate specific roles and responsibilities to all the involved public institutions at the central, local level, and the regional levels, and also putting in place efficient compliance, auditing, and review mechanisms in laws and bylaws. In effect, we are trying to develop some practical enforcement plan in place for dealing with these issues. There are other recommendations. For example, in the existing TBM framework, so the Act 917, we need to ensure that the first schedule, which is the list of hazardous and other waste, and the fifth schedule, the items to which levy is applicable, are also strengthened. And imports of hazardous waste, plastic waste, will be banned under the amendment of the BC Annex VIII, and also considering extending the ban to the domestic production and use of the plastic types, especially under Annex VIII. There are some indications also in the National Plastic Management Plan, or the policy which we need to also strengthen. For example, we need to introduce indications regarding transboundary movement of plastic waste within the framework of the 2019 amendments of the Basel Convention Annexes, and also establish a system for maintaining a proper inventory of imports and exports. Now we try to develop a new instrument at the national level for plastic waste. So, for example, introducing bylaws and secondary legislation at the local level, which will include clear provisions and procedures on classification, defining the clear mandates and competencies for monitoring, controls, enforcement, prosecutions, and takebacks. And the central government should be able to produce a model bylaw for that matter. Then we need to build the capacity for transboundary movement. Here, we need to have tailored regular training on the TBM and illegal traffic of plastic waste to inspectors and our legal people who actually first, who are really monitoring and this, and also at the local level and the national level as well. We also want to have some specialized regular training on investigating and prosecuting waste crime for our legal people and also people who are involved in the monitoring and, for example, our prosecutors and our judges as well. We need to have some take-back issues. Here, establishing specific collaboration mechanisms for countries which the plastic waste originates from for the implementation of the take-back, and also develop relevant guidelines for the practitioners. Operating procedures and rules for risk intervention are also very necessary. Here, we need to adopt some standard operating procedures for our operators and develop interventions strategies for our authorities, the ministry, the agencies, EPA, and the customs officers, based on the risk assessment that we have done or will be doing, and create a checklist for the risk. So this is the kind of graph I was talking about initially. If you look at the importation from 2013 to 2019, it's like a tenfold increment, which is of concern. So basically, due to time constraints, I'd like to end here to thank all of you for your kind attention, and then I'll be available for questions as we proceed. Thank you so much. Over to you, Joel.
Thanks very much, Sam. And yes, very interesting presentation from you. And I'm certain that many colleagues are going to be in touch with you, because getting the legal provisions in place are also very important. And I think Ghana has done an amazing job based on what you've described. Certainly, again, I'll just reiterate, if you have questions, please keep them for the end. We are a bit pressed for time, and you can put them in the chat. I do see, Serene, I think you have your hand up from Gaia, but could I ask that you lower your hand and we ask the question at the end, please? Thank you. So with that, we do have a short time to do 2 more presentations, so I will urge my colleagues from WCO. I know Ru will be brief, and Interpol to be as brief. So the next presentation is from the World Customs Organization, and is being presented on the plastic waste amendments and customs enforcement considerations, and it is going to be presented by Mr. Ru Rat. Ru is seconded from the South African Revenue Service to the WCO, and he served in various positions at that Revenue Service in Enforcement and Customs Division. He is currently the Manager for Environment Program at the World Customs Organization, and the Environment Program is one of the key enforcement programs with Compliance and Enforcement Directorate. Ru, you have the floor, and I must say, how's it?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and your presentation is up, yes.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all. Julie, it's good to see you again. Unfortunately, it's raining in Brussels. We don't have, I think, the weather you have. Nevertheless, as Jules said, I'll be brief. Just a couple of points I would like to share with you, and my presentation is less technical and more operational, and I would like to share with you just a few customs considerations regarding the plastic waste amendments. But first of all, the World Customs Organization, for those of you who don't know, consists of 183 customs administrations. We're the only international organization that caters for customs administrations, and we set various standards and assist with enforcement, capacity building, etc. Our members control, our 183 members control 98% of international trade, which is quite significant. Every year there's a customs theme for the year, and for this year it is customs fostering sustainability for people, prosperity and the planet. And I can say that it is one of the key considerations within the global customs community to look at sustainability, and the Basel Convention and the work it does is our priority for the World Customs Organization, for our members. I've been asked by the Basel Convention to quickly chat to you and talk to you on the operation, one of the flagship enforcement operations of the World Customs Organization, called Operation the Meter. This year, we busy, or the iteration, it's the Meter 6, and it runs from 14 September to 11 October. As you can see, we in the midst of the operation, of the enforcement operation. We have 70 customs administrations participating. I was hoping for more, but I can clearly see that some of the customs administrations are severely affected in terms of operational capacity due to COVID. Unfortunately, I can't share the status of the current operation with you as it's still running. And what I've neglected to say, we also have colleagues in the international, other international organizations supporting us, like Interpol, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, etc. So there's a good turnout in terms of international organizations concerned with waste shipments. I can just say or mention that for the previous operation last year, Operation Demeter 5, we had 232 seizures over a 4-week period, which added up to 4.5 thousand tons of different types of waste. The enforcement challenges looking to the future. Just a couple of things I would like to share. First of all, from a customs perspective, we've got different priorities. In the customs environment, and specifically for the enforcement teams, you should understand that there is focus on the revenue, narcotics, weapons, intellectual property rights, CITES, etc. So there are various competing, for the lack of a better word, competing priorities. It is currently a lesser known area of control and enforcement within the customs community. And of course, there are exceptions. Some countries are performing to a higher level, but in general, I would say that it is not one of the best known areas of control and enforcement. The risk is increasing within the customs world, as acknowledged by the WCO, as I've said, and we do play an active role in Enforce and in the plastic waste partnership. What can we do in terms of changing that? Easier said than done, but it's also not all that challenging if we continue to raise awareness with the customs authorities. We need to secure political buy-in, and we need to, within the customs community, ensure that waste shipments and plastic waste is regarded as a strategic priority area. You can use the risk, explaining the risk to the economy, tax revenue, the environment, etc., to strengthen the awareness of the work that needs to be done when waste cross borders. And very important, and I think Sam spoke about this, the continuous training of customs authorities and specialists. That's crucial, because in general, except I understand in the UK there may be a different working arrangement, but in general it's usually your customs authority responsible for the movement of transboundary, for the control of transboundary movements at time of importation, transit and exportation. So it's crucial to build capacity. So in short, it's important for the competent authority to reach out and build a working relationship with customs. I think that will change quite a lot. And that's also what we promote within customs, to reach out to the competent authorities to establish a working relationship. Some technical challenges, again, this is from the view of a customs frontline officer. It requires fairly detailed knowledge, and throughout, the customs officer faced with a container needs to be in a position to confirm what the status of the goods is, of the waste is, and I'll talk about that. Again, we need to establish a working relationship with the competent authority. We need to have access to specialized and quick assistance from the national focus points. And if I just click down, If I look at B3011, for example, the types of plastic waste that are presumed not to be hazardous, it presents an opportunity from a risk perspective, in my view, to circumvent certain customs controls. A customs officer that does not deal with waste on a daily basis might find it challenging to identify whether consignment is PE, PP, is whatever the case may be. The customs officer may raise certain questions regarding the categorization of waste. Should it go under Y48 or should it be under B3011? Is it destined for recycling in an environmentally sound manner? And for this, you can clearly see that there needs to be a working relationship between customs and the competent authority. One of the things which came out when I spoke to my colleague at the WCO is what is almost exclusively mean in terms of the convention and what we're trying to do. At the policy level, parties, and I'm just deviating slightly, I'm looking more at the trade side, parties need to implement certain legal and administrative measures to facilitate and support the implementation and enforcement of plastic waste. So one of the key instruments used at the WCO is the Harmonized Commodity Description and Coding System, or the Harmonized System, or the HS, which is a multi-purpose nomenclature used internationally and developed by the WCO, and it's, as I said, used by 98% of 98% of international trade. It consists of 6 digits. Plastic waste was not fully addressed in the 27 HS iteration, and the cycle runs in 5 years, so version 2022 is the next version, and still, as I understand, we will not, all the challenges regarding plastic waste will not be addressed in the 2022 version, but only in 2027. As a result, countries wishing to open additional national subheadings, countries will wish or should open additional national subheadings for controlling trade in specific goods which are relevant at the national level. They can add more digits as required after the 6-digit international level to address their specific needs. Before I conclude, the WCO luckily has already a lot of systems in place for our members. We, for example, have the Central Enforcement Network where we require and encourage our members to load seizures of waste and other commodities onto a centralized system which can help the administrations to do profiling, case selection, targeting of consignments. I've spoken about the plastic waste partnership where we assist with the development of fact sheets on the HS system. We're also responsible to help and coordinate the TBM Transboundary movement enforcement best practices. We're busy with a project in Asia Pacific where we work with certain customs administrations, and we're looking at we're in the process of developing a customs diagnostic questionnaire which we would like to roll out to customs for them to use to see what their level of readiness is. We also cooperate closely with the UNODC, for example, with the WCO UNODC container control teams. We also cooperate closely with Interpol in enforcement matters, and I can also say that I've seen some requests coming from the African region in terms of waste and enhancing the enforcement activities which we are assisting with. And we've got various other international instruments already established, like the Arusha Declaration, through which customs-related risk data can be exchanged. We've got 11 regional intelligence liaison officers across the globe, which can be used, or which are used by customs administrations to exchange information. So there's quite a bit to do. There's quite a bit already established, but what can be done in conclusion, and it doesn't cost money except perhaps for coffee, reach out to your customs administration. I think to establish a working relationship with your customs authority, and of course customs with the competent authority, can go really a long way in cementing the future enforcement efforts. Thank you very much. I'll stop I'll stop there. Back to you, Jill.
Very much, Ru, and thanks for trying your best to be as concise as possible. I still have some challenges here, so I'll try to see how adept I am at sharing. So thanks again for that very interesting presentation. And looking at enforcement challenges, of course, a lot of it, again, we can identify with raising awareness, having that political buy-in. But I think one of the major points that really resonated with me was that link between customs and the competent authorities, because that is definitely something, a link that's broken in at least the Caribbean countries. And we're really trying at the center, on my other hat, trying to fix that. A very interesting discussion on the HS codes, which is something that I think I will talk to you personally about, but really a very interesting presentation. So thanks. Tatiana, we are at 11 a.m. in my time, and how do we proceed? Do we have at least 15 minutes? Because we do have the Interpol presentation, and we have a ton of questions. Yes?
Yes, thank you, Jules. I think we have some additional time, so let's hear from our colleagues in Interpol.
Good. So, Tatiana, so with your indulgence, and colleagues, I know most of you are interested in this topic, so I beg your indulgence too. I know you have many competing priorities, but if we can give at least 5 minutes to Interpol, and then we could try to address some of the questions. So the Interpol presentation is being done by Svetlana Popova. Svetlana was born in Bulgaria and graduated with a master's degree in international cooperation, political science, and public administration in France, and is a certified Prince 2 practitioner. She's adept at project management. She joined Interpol Environmental Security Program in January 2020. As project manager, she's responsible for ensuring successful coordination and delivery of a series of projects within forestry and pollution crime areas. She has almost 10 years experience in managing complex collaborative projects with a strong focus on research, innovation, and international cooperation, and in particular in the area of environment, sustainable development, and quality of life. And she's worked extensively in France, Belgium, and Brazil for many public institutions and international associations, including the European Commission, Eurocities, Lyon Metropole City Council. Svetlana, also, I should say, in addition to having a time crunch when you offered to do this, she's actually replacing her colleague, Patricia, who is feeling poorly this morning, could not do the presentation. So, Svetlana, now your task is double difficult, because I'm going to ask that you try to be as concise as possible, given that we're already over time. You have the floor. Thank you.
Very much. I'm going to share my screen with you because there was a slight technical issue. So please let me know if you can see my screen first, and in particular the presentation, which I'm going to include in full screen. Now you should be able to see it. So thank you very much for inviting Interpol to this webinar. This topic is very, very important for us. Yes, it is true that I wasn't following this particular topic in such detail. I have joined the Interpol security program, environmental security program in January 2020, but I have followed the results, and I'll provide you a concise, very summarized overview of an analytical report that we have provided on illegal plastic waste tracking. The report was published very recently in August, and we believe that the key findings from this report are going to definitely be relevant for the enforcement of the plastic waste amendments starting from January 2021. So just to go straight to the point, as a background and as a reminder, as you know, in July 2017, China has decided to introduce a very serious restriction of all import of solid waste, including recyclable plastic waste, and this restriction was entered into force in January 2018. And as you may know as well, for decades, China was importing 45%, even more, of the world's waste from 43 countries. So Interpol decided to analyze the impact on this big change in terms of the trade routes and the trends. So we were mainly interested in the criminal trends and the threats emerging from this change, in particular since 2018. And our objective was to provide an informed and targeted enforcement, and of course to anticipate risks of emerging criminal trends in the future. In order to identify the illegal traffic, we have analyzed the impact on the legal market first. So, of course, there was a disruption of a relatively stable supply-demand chain with an increasing uncertainty on the future, global future of the waste management and recycling. And what we have mainly observed is a decrease in the volume internationally traded, which of course could have led also to a probable increase of the waste in the source countries. And on the other hand, we have a rerouting of exports, especially towards Southeast Asia. This is the legal market. So in order to conduct our report and analysis, we have collected data from 40 member countries, and we analyzed the main trade routes before and after 2018, and we were looking at all the illegal shipments detected since 2018. On this map here, you can see we have identified 257 trade routes, and most importantly, about 52 of them were illegal, which means that 20% of the global trade routes, legal, were actually illegal, and most of them were concentrated in Southeast Asia. On this map here, you can see two main trends. As mentioned, global increase of shipment towards South and Southeast Asia, but also an intra-European trade also increased here, mainly in Eastern Europe. And the most important for us was to observe that the illegal trade follows the legal. Basically, there is a certain infiltration of illegal trade within the legal. To not go too much in detail, just to make a zoom on Southeast Asia. So, for instance, we have noticed that Malaysia was a country that has been most impacted by the change that happened in January 2018. Currently, with what you see in red is actually the illegal shipment coming from Spain, Great Britain, Netherlands, Portugal, Canada, Indonesia, Ireland. And in black, what you see is actually the source countries who have increased their legal shipment towards specifically this part of Asia. So what happens mainly as a result of this increase in the legal and illegal shipment is that we have an increase in the repatriation requests, which of course leads to a certain kind of saturation, in particular in the ports, because we end up having a lot of waste that has been stuck without moving. Because the repatriation requests are quite complex to manage. And we have also a new plastic waste import restrictions that these countries are trying to introduce as well, following the China example, which means that soon we can expect from these countries to try and introduce new restrictions, which might lead, of course, to another rerouting of the current traffic. As a conclusion, what we should highlight is that what we have observed in this report is a huge, very important change in terms of the trade routes. So, of course, almost no import towards China, but on the other hand, we have an over-concentration in Southeast Asia. And we have also a change in the modus operandi in three major ways. We have a continuous rerouting of the waste shipments. have a slight increase in the misdeclaration of plastic waste, and we have an increase in the illegal waste treatment, which we have you can find all the details in the report that we have provided. If I have to just list the trends of the misdeclaration, we have observed 4 main trends. The one is related to contaminated or mixed with other waste streams declared as non-hazardous. So basically, we have also contaminated plastic waste concealed behind the clean plastic waste, and we have misdeclarations supporting tax evasion and misdeclarations of the final destination using a transit country in a free trade. Quite a few of those trends are clearly linked also to financial crime and to documents falsification. Then we have also 3 growing trends observed of the illegal waste treatment. In particular, we have the plastic waste imported towards unauthorized recycling facilities, but we also have an increase in the illegal disposal of domestic waste in both import and export countries. And we have an increase in the waste fire, whether it's deliberate or accidental, especially in the export countries. So all the details are available on our official website. You have 3 different reports, in fact, of which are law enforcement restricted. But we also have a 3rd one which is publicly available as well, with, of course, all the confidential information not being included. For all the details of the report, I invite you to visit our website and do not hesitate to download the report, and also to contact the Environmental Security Program in Interpol for every question that you might have. Thank you very much. I hope I was concise enough.
Thank you so much, Svetlana. You tried your best, and thank you so much, and a lot of information. Good to see. It's always good to see data, and that expression of the trade routes, the amount of illegal shipments, etc., is quite interesting to see the changes too. Huge movement to Southeast Asia, but also I'm sure that there are other issues that are happening. And also interesting to learn that the trade routes are mimicking the legal trade routes are also very interesting. And I think the issues that you raised are the same issues beyond plastic waste, with tax evasion, misdeclarations, hiding in containers. So all of those issues are still confronting us with the plastic as well. So thanks very much for your presentation, and thanks to all the presenters for their presentation. So I'm now going to move very quickly to the chat. I know that some of it was answered privately, and I'll ask the presenters to try and treat the best person to treat with some of the questions. So the first one thing is, there was a question, more of a statement to Sam asking about the ban of plastic waste in Ghana. I don't know if, Sam, you want to respond to that question?
I think, hello, thanks, Joel, again. I think it's a good question, but the law does not ban plastic waste yet. That's why we allow them. But I believe that when the amendment is really enforced, and even if you are aware, Ghana and Switzerland are even pushing for a new amendment to the Basel Convention to ensure that the prior informed consent procedure is actually set for all hazardous and non-hazardous waste. In that case, before even the waste comes, you have the opportunity to say yes or no. So I think it's a good thing that we need to consider, but I believe that our laws are being looked at, and perhaps, as already said, we have a lot of waste here in the country. So why do we bring it always? I think it's not necessary. So we'll look at it. Thank you.
Thanks for that answer. I think the question from Serene to Mr. Russ was answered. Am I mistaken? What measures the UK authorities are taking in regard to the repatriation of the 200 containers from Sri Lanka? That was on BBC News this morning, actually. Well, not this morning, 27th, yesterday. Russ? I don't know if he's still with us. The next question is to the WCO about the names of the companies involved in the seizures. I'm not sure if that's an easy question to answer.
It is. It's unfortunately not what I would like to answer, but the WCO supports its members. We've got no mandate and local standard to drive international, or how can I say this? We are there in support of our members at the technical level. We do coordinate and we do assist them, but it still remains a national prerogative what they would like to publish or not in terms of national legislation. So it ultimately resolves or resorts, with the national government, whether they want to or would like to publish these things or not. We cannot do that on their behalf.
Right. There's a follow-up question for the WCO, Ru, and that is, have you identified any serious offenders in the Demeter 6 operations?
Well, in
Demeter 5.
Yeah, we have. Again, that's the prerogative of our members to share and to use, and it's usually in relation to their specific jurisdictions. Again, they do share with the other exporting, importing and transit countries specific information, and sometimes that passes between them and the operational coordination unit, which we set up for the operations. So, yeah, in some instances, and I've looked today at the warning messages communicated between the members for Operation Demeter 6, and they do share specific nominal data on specific consignments, containers, companies, etc. So that is being communicated within the customs environment.
Okay, thanks, Ru. There's a question about if HS codes are fudged, and I'm not sure if. How do you know if HS codes are fudged or falsified?
Yes, that's a challenge, and that's why it is so critical to have waste and plastic waste specifically regarded as a strategic priority within customs, because then your customs administration looks specifically at refining information and developing intelligence on plastic waste. But that's always a challenge. Whatever the commodity is, usually what happens, the risk management division in customs generates profiles. They develop indicators profiles, and that's then integrated with the clearance system within customs. And that is how containers are selected, and it should be risk-based. But that is a challenge, and this is exactly where the controls are circumvented and attempted to be circumvented. For example, and I see that's a question further down, tariff heading 3915, plastic scrap. It's used to clear waste plastic mix, that deals with other waste, and that is being used to cloak certain other waste that shouldn't be cleared there. So, for instance, medical waste may be thrown in under 3915. Again, it comes back to risk management, and it comes up to an enforcement capacity which is capacitated, and thirdly, that has the link established to the competent authority to be able to verify where they do not have the information or the knowledge at hand. Yeah.
Sounds true. I think you're off the hook for a while till I come. I'm scrolling down, so yes. There's really a question about clarification on the Y48 and the V3011 in practice and how to distinguish them. What is the definition? This is something that's prompted us with almost free from contamination. I think that might be a secretariat type approach, or this person can reach out to the secretariat on this. Repeat offenders. They wanted the interval. Sorry, I'm scrolling and reading. This one is for Svetlana about, again, similar to the question posed to Ru about naming the companies and people involved in seizures, but I guess I don't want to answer on your behalf, but I assume it may be a similar approach, Svetlana, where it's up to the country once the information is provided. Svetlana?
In fact, we cannot use for us. Nominal information is confidential. So if the question is about can we name companies or any nominal information in the report, no. The answer is no. However, we can facilitate information sharing between countries by using our secure communication channel I-24/7. So if there is any kind of request for information coming from a member country, we can facilitate the information exchange, or we can provide the relevant information, but only via our secured information channel. Does this answer your question?
Yes, maybe as you have your mic on, there's a question about overlap between WCO and Interpol. I know it exists, but maybe you could just give us a few words on that.
Is there an overlap between Interpol and WCO? So this is the question?
WCO, yes, WCO work and Interpol. Is there an overlap between the two?
No, I think that we are perfectly complementary. I don't have enough experience in Interpol yet to fully answer this question, but from what I see, it's been now 2 years I work for Interpol. I see that we are complementary, and especially when it comes to deploying law enforcement operations, we definitely need to work together, especially when it comes to detecting illegal, let's say, timber trafficking, or for anything related to seizures. Customs, in that sense, have a crucial role, and Interpol has to and the WCO have to work together for sure. We are complementary. I don't think that we have overlap. It's just that for Interpol, for instance, our main let's say stakeholders are, of course, the national central bureaus in each country, but the law enforcement agencies and customs. So maybe we have a little bit more of a broad scope in terms of law enforcement.
Svetlana, I guess, Ru, you agree with that, yes? That you all are complementary, yes, working alongside each other?
I think that's a good response. I can add, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. There's a question from Serene about the misdeclarations. Is it the traders or surveyor companies? I think the misdeclarations may more than likely be the person who's exporting. That's my experience. I don't know if maybe Tatiana, you could respond there. I think that would be the answer, that it's really the person who's doing the shipping that would do the misdeclaration. So the broker company or the exporter themselves. There's just a quick administrative question on the Interpol email, but I think when we send the presentations, we'll have the emails there. If Interpol wishes, Svetlana, maybe you could just type your email, general email. It said it was cut out by the dialog box.
Sorry. I posted it on the chat box. Maybe it has.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get to there yet. Sorry.
No problem.
No.
Jules?
Yes.
If I can just jump in.
Yes.
We're getting we're a bit over time, so and there are a lot of questions. So what we suggest is that we're collecting those questions, and those questions which we didn't manage to answer right now, we will prepare the answers together with the speakers in writing. And also just to remind that we will have another webinar on Wednesday for the different time zones for those who could not join today. So I'm sure there will be more questions. So I think we'll collect all the questions from the two sessions and we'll prepare the compilated replies.
Thanks very much, Tatiana. So with that, colleagues, based on what Tatiana said, sorry that we can't answer all the questions. We are significantly over time, and as I said, we have competing priorities. So given that the next session is on Wednesday, the 30th of September, it is at 10 a.m. That would be, yeah, it would be 10 a.m. It's 5 a.m. for me. So I know that Katie Ollie, the chair of Enforce, will be chairing that session. Feel free to ask your questions. As Tatiana said, we will try to address the unanswered questions and send them to you along with the presentation. But we do thank you for your time, your patience, and of course, my warmest thanks to the presenters and the secretariat, especially Tatiana, for pulling this together. So with that, colleagues, have a good day, a good evening, a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Jules?
Sure, thanks, no problem. Yeah. Hey, Kitty, thanks, yeah, no worries. Good luck on Wednesday. I'll try join, but, yeah, I'll try. I'm an early bird, but I'll try.
Thank you. Thank you, Jules.